Before we start the next election cycle, I just want to point one thing out. The way the rules are written is a little loose. Notably, some of the stuff you do between elections is written in this at the start, but that begins with, and there's nothing to say that says go back to this, but there's nothing that begins with players choose randomly or by agreement which political parties they will represent. But what it doesn't go into is any kind of seating order or anything like that as well. So, I mean, much of this is kind of left up to the player to decide. But notably, you don't reassign the political parties in between, would be my best guess. But you do some of the other things that are listed in this at the start. And, you use reason when you face rule books, and reason doesn't necessarily apply. And in this one, it's pretty clear what should be happening, unlike somewhat more abstracted games that leave things out, like fucking Invasions that I'm playing right now, and that this is a break from. But I just wanted to kind of point that out, that I can deal with things that are left kind of untied for a little bit. Anyway, what I've got to do is, starting with our new chancellor, choose an agenda, and it's done in order, and I guess we maintain the same order. Things other than what effect they have in particular locations, which can be important, there's no question. So like, you might be interested in, hey, I want to make sure that I have one of these three in Brandenburg, because Brandenburg's worth a lot of bonus points, and I want to consider what's here. But if I look at the three choices the communists have, it's liberal, socialism, and pro-labor. And if you kind of look down them, forget the 9 on top of here. We got a 7 top here, jobs. It's not a bad chart. Social welfare under socialism, a little bit better. But labor reform is just sort of inherently better. And it's not like other things aren't. So like jobs as a secondary is better than the secondary in either of these. So there are certain charts that are just better than others. Remember, chart isn't everything. The center actually chose pro-labor for the same reason, to cover him, and also it's a nice chart. That means on all the states where I'm not putting big bids in, I'm going to be getting slightly better scores for that pro-labor. But I don't have as much political capital to spend as, say, socialism does, or these others that get weaker and weaker as you go your way up. Now, the government doesn't necessarily need a lot of points. It helps. I mean, it definitely helps. But again, there's a certain balance in play that you have to take in mind. Hey, how many bonus points, how many am I going to be hitting the top end of the scale on? We've seen a bit of a shift to the left with everyone because, the communists won, and so the Social Democrats have moved to the law and order position, and there's no real reason for this, just whatever. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have picked them yet. Center moved all the way down to pro-labor from law and order. The nationalists remained conservative. The Nazis remained demagogue, but the biggie is the Social Democrats dropped one, and the center shifting quite significantly towards pro-labor, because, hey, that worked pretty well for the communists. Yeah, but the communists had certain advantages in their hands, in addition to that. So, whatever. So now we go back here and take a look at the next thing. Now we determine how many political points each one is going to have to spend. And I'll roll them out. But I don't really want to do that on video. But the Social Democrats and the Communists got good rolls. Now, a good roll for pro-labor as a maximum roll, 25. Social Democrats went with law and order, and I think they're at 34, which was a 5. Crappy roll for the center, also going pro-labor, but only getting 15. I think a kind of weak roll, 30 points for conservatives, and the Nazis crapped out with only 12. And this is probably the most important single die roll, that you're going to have, is how many points did you get. the government can add some significant points to the communists. Remember, the Social Democrats had huge quantities of points because they had a big role in conservative and government. But that's only 4 for the communists. For the government propaganda. Just a couple more quickies. I don't know why I stepped away for any of them. Now we roll for the street mobs first. The brown shirts. And we get a bunch of them. 27. Which probably means we're not going to win. But who knows with the big lie, right? Could get very lucky. And then the communists also get some street. And they get a crappy 9. I don't think anybody wants to buy any additional mobs. I mean, is this enough to protect us? I don't know. But we also have the army. He's got plenty. And the fact that he has plenty kind of makes everybody else say, yeah, you know, let the Nazis prevent this communists from winning while they own the government. And I think that is... Again, that would be done secretly, but I just don't see people making that decision because you're feathering your own nest and you don't know. Like, at this point in the game, these guys might be able to say, hey, I'm not sure. I don't think I can win. Maybe I want to buy some street mobs. But, you know, on the other hand, yeah. Because nothing carries over or anything. So, like, losing massively is the same as coming in second or third. But if I collect delegates, I help prevent whoever's strongest from collecting delegates. So there's kind of a balance thing, and who knows, if I've got those points, you know, maybe I get super lucky and great stuff happens. Maybe I match up against his actions, whatever. I don't know. But I can't see buying the street mobs for him. And for other people, if we're looking here, they got a shot at winning the election if the Nazis are going after the communists hard. So, you know, screw it, man. Anyway, so that's going to put it on the communists to make the decision on where the first election is. And I don't know what to do. Again, like before, it feels to me, and this could just be my psychology, that you kind of want to, especially as the government who gets this choice, you kind of want to hold the big votes till the end. Do you really knock someone off balance by picking it when they have more points? You know, they always have enough points to commit to the big voting areas. Well, you might go for a strategy where you fire one of them off early because you're hoping people won't commit enough, or will maybe commit too much to it, and then you can kind of run the table elsewhere. But what we saw was, you know, there's kind of enough points. You pick your fights, you score your points in them, and you hope you get the big bonuses there. And it's just not that big a deal to collect up, although the communists kind of won off of it, I think, to collect up all the little states. But they were doing it anyway, you know, so who knows. I'm going to open things up. This is a good place for us to get rid of a Versailles token. There's nothing else that's particularly interesting there. Yes, it's worth more than some of the other places, but some of these other places have labor reform or social welfare in them as well that have Versailles. So I'm kind of like, I found one that doesn't. This is actually probably another good one, although jobs is one of our categories, so we could score that there. We're we're basically looking for places to kill off our Versailles card early on. We got initial tie votes of 3 with a bonus for Law and Order and Conservatives, Social Democrats, and the Nationalists playing those. And then the Nazi demagogue actually managed to score a high value of 3. That got them, that can't be right, of 2. That got them to 4. They took the 3rd place finish there. And just burned their 2nd Versailles card here in Pomerania. The Social Democrats won this one by playing the cool Justice card, a couple of bucks they threw into it. Justice is kind of one of their best things, so I didn't want to do it without spending money since I have a pile. That got me another 7 points there. There was a 3-way tie between the Communists, the Center, and the Nazis, all of whom played cards that aren't particularly powerful for them. And the Nationalists played one of the worst cards in the game, the Fiscal Austerity. It's pretty shitty and is only available to the Conservatives. Yes, I was counting on using action with it last time, but somebody covered me, which kind of sucked. So that didn't really work very well. So now we got a nice lead going for the Social Dems, but they have spent some money, and I think these guys are the only ones who spent money as well. So let's move on to one of their next kind of weaker choices, which is jobs. It's not terrible. Social welfare is actually a little worse, but I was having trouble finding a social welfare, and I said, hey, that's where I want to go, as I was working my way up. They actually ended up tying in this with the Center and getting the lead there. And you can see they pulled a good 6 points each net in that, whereas in 3rd place went to the Nationalists, using another fiscal austerity. So that this is kind of good. They're getting points without spending money and getting rid of some of their good cards, or some of their lousy cards. Other people are also getting rid of lousy cards too, and that's how this is happening. So like the Versailles is not a good one for the Social Democrats, although honestly, you know, they really want justice, and that's what they're going to spend most of their points on, is to get those extra points in justice. And similarly, for the Nazis, they have very, very few bucks, and they're saving them for the big lie to just try to rack up points. Really, the fact that like people have piles of money is very promising. So like the Communists having this big pile, they're kind of dangerous, and we have to worry about them. And right now, they're in striking distance of our leading green player, who, you know, is getting by and also has a nice sum of cash. But we don't worry too much about him getting the Chancellor. He's probably not going to get that over 30%. So the question is, can the Communists get a repeat and win the game that way? Burning through kind of shitty cards. Now again, I took jobs here. I could have taken social welfare, but there are other states that have both. It's really kind of a question of which of those to eat up where. This seems like a perfectly fine one to eat the jobs, although the social welfare is, I think, the slightly worse card. Other people also picked shitty cards, but the Nazis picked as a shitty card New Order, because they don't think they have the funds to do all the big lies they want to and the new orders. So this seemed like a fine place to burn that, because they got no bonuses other than Versailles. And crap, I probably gave them too much, right? 4, 7, 8. They do not have a bonus there. So this is 15 total. They ended up winning it with a damn good die roll, like a 5 or a 6. A 6 actually. It's a risky maneuver, and this is the problem with Demagogue. If you have a decent amount of money, you can boost all your new orders and certainly all your big lies. but they have chances of generating zeros, and which most things don't, and don't necessarily have big payoffs unless you can get some significant bucks into them. And if you're going to put significant bucks, you want to put it in the big lie. So I considered New Order a burn card. We got a three-way tie between this side of the table, and you can see our lead is at 20 here, but everybody else is really tight, 16 or 15. I fucked up, I think, by playing a Versailles here. Although I'm not sure. Yeah, that should be. I should have saved that for the Rhineland, I think, where I'm gonna want it. And that actually ended up being a big deal because justice applies here, and our Social Democrats went with it. They threw a couple of bucks in, and that got them the win. So they're up to the lead at 30, with the others trailing kind of behind. This was, of course, an attempt to get rid of social welfare. Yellow saw the same opportunity there. The Nazis tried their New Order trick again, and this time it crapped out completely. Players with pro-labor platforms have gotten rid of their last non-optimal card, a social welfare, and other people are largely out of the game too in terms of getting their cards out of the way. So the blue went with an anti-red, as did the Nazis. But the big win was an anti-red policy by the law and order side. They and the nationalists both spent some money. They both have piles of money, right? Well, the Social Democrats are following something similar to what the communists were doing last time, which is scoring lots of points where everybody's kind of getting away with stuff, you know, trying to shove their cards away. So, you know, they've worked up a pretty good lead at 38 to 24 for the communists. Communists are still a hell of a threat, though. They have the levers of government in their hand. Communists decide to fire off the second biggest territory, Bavaria, because their capabilities don't really work there. They threw a Versailles in there. I'm kind of wishing I had done something else somewhere else. Iffy. I mean, if I had done LR instead, I probably could beat Versailles. I don't know why I did it that way. And of course, the center did exactly what they did because they follow them immediately, and I don't have time to think differently. But the biggie here was the big lie was fired off with $4 in propaganda, and that netted the Nazis 10 votes plus 1 for bonus, for -1 for not being a bonus. Shit. The big lie is never a bonus. I just can't keep that out of my mind. So plus 8 for winning the province. And then the Social Democrats went with justice. They threw some bucks in, got a base vote of 6. That got them to 10-11 votes because justice is important there. And the nationalists did something similar and didn't get quite as much. This is, you know, where your platform really matters. And the communists basically have very little chance of winning in Bavaria. They do have a chance of winning in the big prize of Brandenburg, though. So I figured I'd drain some people's points, you know, by throwing Bavaria in. And actually the Nazis threw $4 in, so that's a pretty big deal. Unfortunately, I think I stole a buck for them because they were at 12 and 9 plus 4 is 13. So I meant to throw 3 in for them, and I think I just made weird change or something. It took $6 for a 5. But when I thought about it, I thought $4 makes sense for it. Because the big lie, you really want to make sure you get a maximal value off that. All right. Players with decent amounts of money are beginning to throw that money into the elections now as we go into Thuringia, where everybody's got something valuable. The justice parties, and for no great reason. Certainly justice for law and order is a good table, but labor reform is a better table. Beat out the labor parties this time, and the Social Dems ended up getting a big bonus. Getting the win there, that puts them up to 60, which is significantly more than anyone else right now. And they may be, there may be some consideration of them attracting the ire, but you kind of want to hold on to your points, at least if you're me, until towards the end of the election, especially when the bigger states are coming out. Bavaria was kind of an interesting situation. I was expecting that to drain more points than it did, but it didn't. The thing is, until you know kind of the landscape of the final few elections, it's hard to tell where you should use, you know, your money. You can always use that in the best places it's going to gain you stuff. But more importantly, special abilities like the government has, and then your rioters, etc., to knock someone out. Because that's where most of the functionality is. I mean, sure, Rally Band can help you in a situation like, hey, we're probably the only ones with labor reform out of the current pile. I believe so. Because there are no liberals in play. It's all more conservative side who don't care about that. Which is a powerful ticket for us. But, you know, other than that, other than trying to prevent this guy from beating you for first place, which probably isn't that valuable if you're looking at Thuringia, where there's a difference of 1 point between first and second place. The other factor there is, you know, you generally are going to use some of these powers to try to prevent the person who might win the election. And that's why we saw them all kind of come out, the street mobs and everything like that, come out when the landscape is well defined and you have an idea of who's likely going to, you know, be winning the election. Now, it ended up too late to stop the communists, but it was early enough to prevent them from winning on one election, you know. And that's kind of the thing. Maybe I stepped in too late. Maybe somebody could have won the election if they had you know, used their violence a little earlier. This, of course, is important to take into account in our current national election. No, because, you know, we have a single election day, but we do have early voting in some places and everything. So as polling starts determining, hey, did you vote? You know, and a best guess as to which side somebody voted for. The most undecided people are the people who are liable to hold off to the last moment when they're going to vote, right? So you got to be kind of careful. But if you're going to start, you know, bringing violence out, this game is a good representation of what factors play into that, right? I don't know. I really don't know if it is. But certainly, one thing the game doesn't represent is sort of the negative reflection of using violence. I am pretty sure that even Weimar Germany, you did not have people just, oh, yeah, they're fighting in the streets again. I have the feeling that both the communists and Nazis attracted a certain degree of negative publicity for using those street mobs. And sure, you're spending resources on it, but you're also possibly hurting your chances in all these elections. And that's not, you know, I don't think that's well enough represented in the game. In the Baden election, it goes well for the communists. Big payout for them, though, and that they had to put into it, though. They're inching up to 44, still kind of in range. The second place was the Nationalists, who, you know, didn't get quite as much of a bonus. They lost a point for second instead of first, and they also didn't, they're playing Justice instead of the Labor Reform. The Nazis are beginning to be a little unhappy with their big lies. They're getting crappy rolls, they're getting zeros on it. They've been better off going with smear and take points from somebody that they're afraid is going to win, as well as gain points themselves. Smear is not a bad option for them. That's the whole thing. As long as they're going to roll a 4 or less, smear is their strongest option. But here's the thing. As soon as they go to a 5 or a 6, the big lie just starts jumping up there. So it seems like a worthwhile value. Let me see. 6, 14, 15, 16, 17 total versus 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But that 11 takes points away from one of your enemies. So smear is incredibly powerful for the Nazis compared to the point gains that other people are looking at. Other people have, you know, very strong, well, so what did we say? This was like 13 for the big lie. Let's take a look at labor reform. 13, 18, 22, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. You know, to give you an idea of what we're looking at. Now, if we look at somebody weak like the conservatives, their big is 11, 15, 19, 24, 25, 26. Still not bad, right? You know, and that's probably the weakest strong play. So, I don't know, you know. Of course, if you look at Versailles, let's take a look at the points that would get. So that would get 2, because this would have been impacted by it. That would get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus 6 is 13, which is as good a total payoff as the big lie, but a little bit more proportioned, you know, so you're not taking as big a chance. But I need a big chance. I'm not anywhere near first place, so. Just trying to dissect some of the choices that you're making here. Why I keep playing big lie, you know. Why this one? Well, the alternative is really the smear campaign. So the Nazis decided to go with smear, and they targeted the communists, who were not in the lead. But here's the deal. If the communists win 2 in a row, they win the game. So we want to prevent them, you know, from getting this one, obviously. So we smeared them, but they ended up winning this election anyway. They got a nice die roll. They have good cash on it. They got a 6. Plus 3 is 9 maximum. So they're now at 57. The Social Democrats ended up tied for second place in this Silesian election and are at 72 in the clear lead. And then behind that, the center, the yellow, hey, they're riding the communist coattails. They have the same platform. They just don't have as much money. So they're getting the same advantages of, oh, look, this is where that big labor reform starts bonusing in. So they're gaining some serious points here, but it's, you know, they're at a disadvantage to red. And what's kind of neat is they're handcuffed. They can't smear red, the commies, because that would waste their good rolls here. You know, they could have done it earlier, but at this point they can't afford to without saying, I'm not in it to win this election, I'm in it to prevent the communists from winning the game. And then at the back, the Nazis did that smear. They didn't get a great, you know, I mean, even a good roll is only 2 point each way. But they got a kind of pitiful roll. And, well, it's better than what they've been getting. And the toys are starting to come out. The communists sent some workers out to go beat up on the Social Democrats because they have too big a lead. I've got to surpass them to win the game on this one. So I sent a bunch of soldiers. I went into Hesse-Nassau. It's actually a fairly valuable place. I didn't realize how valuable it was. Not only does it have LR and Justice, but it's got a 6 base value. Well, the Nazis smeared the communists again and made it so that the center won with basically the same ticket as the communists had. For the communists, one of the problems is if I want to call on a rally ban, that costs me a minimum of 1, plus 1 per die roll increase that I have. So it's kind of and that's political points, not, you know, sending my thugs in to enforce the ban. So that's kind of an expensive choice. I don't have infinite supplies of political capital. If I did, I would be competing better in all the states instead of trying to do rally bans. Rally bans are painful. Best against the Nazis, obviously, but I might, if I'm afraid that like the Nazis are going to start sending their own thugs in. I might throw the army in. That costs 1, but can negate a huge amount of street thugs. So that's kind of cool. Okay, what else happened here? So first place went to the center, second to the communists, third went actually to the nationalists. But in terms of points, things are getting really tight now. So the Social Dems are at 76, the Communists at 67, and the Center and Nationalists at 57. And of course the Nazis, yeah, they're 20 points, call it 40 points behind the lead. But 3 big lies at big money can get them those points. On the other hand, other people are going to get points too, unless I'm using my brown shirts fairly effectively. So I don't think the Nazis can win the fight. And I think their goal then is what? You know, I mean, if you can't win the chancellery, certainly stopping the communists is important. Everything else is kind of secondary. What do I care? Well, I can look at the victory points that people accumulated last time and see, other than the communists, the center and the nationalists got a lot of points as well. So if I'm going to favor anyone, it's the Social Democrats. Typeface screwed me up again. I didn't realize the Rhineland was a 632. I thought it was a 4, like, the Saxony I thought was the big one sitting out there, so I thought I was going into one of 2 equal little ones. Well, turns out that's not the case. Of course, everybody played it the same way. It wasn't until I double-checked, and my eyes and the print for this is crappy. My wife likes it for some reason. So what happened? Well, that's where we went. The Nazis threw a couple of points of thugs in against the communists this time, and that was sufficient to knock them down, so they didn't place. First place actually went over to the nationalists again, who are up to 70. The communists are sitting at 71 with a slow growth, but the Social Democrats were one of the second place players, so they're at 83, with the center also there. The Nazis went with the big lie, and it did not work this time again. A big 0 scored for the big lie. Basically the idea being, hey, if I got a ton of these street fighters, I'm going to start doing big lies and stop smearing, because I want to make sure that the communists do not win this one. Hanover, things start getting kind of interesting. You can see a Nazi victory. So, out in force with the stormtroopers now. However, the workers went out to try to conflict against them. The communists end up with a crappy roll overall. Look at them, they're bringing violence. Goddamn socialists, we have to protect ourselves, because the big lie paid off big here. Able to blame the violence that he's been instigating on those who are trying to defend themselves. And from my point of view, and I'm sure from both sides of the point of view, that sounds like what's going on because of the way we're being fed things in our current election. However you want to look at it. But yeah, that big 12 points, hey, that shows some of the power that the Nazis have to grab control, even when they look like they're far behind. Because that's the magic of the big lie, right? Nobody's gonna get that kind of magic off of the current elections. Yeah, but another 12 points of. Oh, I've been forgetting to mark down my BLs here. In fact, any of my primary ones, because everybody's filling them out. I hope. Jesus, I hope. That's justice here. We find that's been done a lot. That's been done a lot. The nationalists is justice, and we've been getting the big lies. Okay, so Yeah, that's a huge jump from this election. And it's not just the 12, he also gets the state value. Second place, though, looks like it went over to the Social Democrats, who get to continue scoring their big value. You know, they continue adding to their lead. The Communists not doing that far in advantage. This is a 69 there, that's a 75. We're down to the last couple elections, and they're both kind of big ones. Okay, so things got interesting again in a different way. The Nazis continuing to pump things into Saxony. The Communists, though, this time called out the army, and their die roll, they just paid 1 for it. Their die roll was 8 big defensive things, plus they threw 3 more in. That's enough to cancel out the number of points that the Nazis had on the street. The problem is the Nazis have 15 for next turn, so we're kind of looking at rally ban as a possibility here. But things are getting really, really tight here. So the Nazis get one with their big lie again. This violence, it's threatening the standard law and order type person. Brings them only up to 66. They're not in striking range of anything. So they could smear. That's what I'm expecting them to do. Just to make sure the Communists do not win the game. And the big race here, though, is between the Social Democrats and the Communists. And we're looking at a 95 to 91 race. That's damn close. However, everyone has the capability to try to damage the Communists. And I don't have enough points to be rally banning everyone. Because I can't go very loud. I don't want to, wake my wife up or piss her off at least. She's probably awake right now. My Hitler impression sounds more like Bernie Sanders. Take that however you like. Everything goes wild in Brandenburg. One person did things normally and wasn't impacted by anyone. The leading player, the Social Democrats, they scored 7 points with a big $5 invested. They had to. They had to go for it because they're the person most likely to stop the Communists. So the Communists did their labor reform. They gathered up 6 points. However, their 1 point of propaganda was beaten out by 15 points of armed mob. Instead of calling out the army and trying to fight the mob, instead I tried to do a rally ban against both these players. Neither one succeeded. Where would I have gotten with the rally ban? Well, he'd still be at 95, so I'd have to make 4 points up on him. I got 6. Part of the rally ban would have gotten me up to 7 if I had stopped the Nazis, because their street thugs wouldn't be in the way. And that would put me then to facing 2 more players who had a total of 3 points of smears. It didn't work out that way, though. The rally bans failed, so instead I'm facing 2, 4, 5 points of smear, and I only end up getting 1 vote bonused over here. And that means the smearers, center gets a vote, the nationalists get 2, the Nazis get 2. I'll come back with the total addition. We got a first place up here with the guy who's in first place, so we know who the next chancellor is. Social Democrats picked this sucker up with a grand total of 112. The Communists stuck at 93. No one else beating that. I mean, they were smearing. They weren't going for high vote counts there. 87 for the Nationalists. And I thought there was something I wanted to say. Oh, yeah. So this is 112. That means as long as there's 224 more points in the other players, we definitely did not win. You only need 30%. That would be 33%. But, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I could figure that out. But this is 173, 180, 260, 350 something. 352, I think, got it. But clearly, again, nobody got 30%. So, we put things back in the Social Democrats' hands. And this is the last round of it. Obviously, no one can let the Social Democrats win this next one. But on the other side of it, we also have to worry about total points for them. They're not. They gained a lot of points this election cycle, but they were kind of towards the bottom of the last election cycle. So maybe I'll total up those votes and see what we're looking at for each of the powers in terms of what they're facing. Look at the totals. The communists are at 184, the Social Democrats at 174, 172 for the nationalists below them. The worst is very clearly the Nazis, only at 151. If they can't win a 30% victory next time, it is highly unlikely that they will have the highest total score of all. They're a good 20-something points below the last. That, maybe if I get like a 130 victory or something, but if I'm getting that many votes, I might be getting that 30%. 20 more votes on this one. Let's see, that would be 150. 150 would be about 300. Yeah, I don't think that would be 30% either. I should get a calculator here, but I don't have one up here. But anyway, the levers of power go back up here, and we'll clean this up and head to the third election round. But first, let me send this one up. And by the way, playing this, even just thinking about this, had me thinking about another game in a similar vein. So we'll probably play like another 4 turns or so of invasions and then have something else kind of like this. Not really, but something small and has some similarities, some connection to this. Up this one goes.